Imagine working for 7 years straight. 7 years of 5 a.m. alarms. 7 years of skipping girls' trips, saying no to dinners out, driving the same beat-up car because you refuse to touch your savings account. 7 years of quietly, patiently, stubbornly building toward one goal. And then, finally, you do it. You buy your first home. Your name on the deed. Your name on the mailbox. Your signature on every single piece of paperwork. You walk through that front door for the first time as the owner, and honey, there is no feeling in the world like it. Now imagine pulling up to that house on a Saturday morning, coffee in hand, zero plans, just a good day ahead, and you see your sister's minivan sitting in your driveway. Her kids' bikes thrown against your front porch. And the spare key, the one you gave your parents for emergencies only, already used. No phone call. No text. No heads up. They didn't ask. They just moved her in. This is not a Lifetime movie, y'all. This happened to a real woman. And what she did next? Step by step, calm and collected? It will absolutely leave you speechless. Stay with me, because this story goes from heartbreak all the way to justice. And it is worth every single minute. To really understand the betrayal, you have to understand the woman first. Because this story doesn't start with a house. It starts long before that. It starts with a little girl who learned very early that if she wanted something in this life, she was going to have to go get it herself. Let's call her Reese. Reese grew up in a middle-class household in the Midwest, the kind of home where the bills always got paid, but just barely, and where money was never something anyone talked about openly. She had one sibling, a younger sister named Kayla. And if you grew up with a younger sibling, you already know how this part of the story goes. Kayla was the baby. Kayla was softer, louder about her feelings, quicker with the tears. And their parents, good people, loving people, but flawed people, responded to that. Kayla's school performances got attended. Kayla's heartbreaks got long kitchen table conversations. Kayla's needs, somehow, always floated to the top. Reese's needs? Reese handled those herself. By 16, she had a part-time job at Target. By 18, she was buying her own school supplies, her own clothes, quietly slipping grocery money onto the counter without being asked. There were no gold stars for any of it. No big acknowledgement. It was just expected because Reese was capable, and somehow, in that family, being capable meant being invisible. After finishing school, Reese worked 2 jobs for 3 solid years. A full-time position in supply chain management during the day. Rideshare driving on weekends. She skipped vacations. She meal prepped. She said no to things that hurt to say no to. And every 2 weeks, a portion of every paycheck went straight into a savings account she barely let herself look at, because she was afraid that if she looked too long, she'd find a reason to spend it. Then came the promotion. Then the raise. Then 2 more years of the same quiet, relentless discipline. And one afternoon in the fall, Reese sat across from a loan officer at a credit union in her city, with her paperwork in a folder, her credit score on the screen, and her heart absolutely hammering in her chest. She walked out of that meeting with a pre-approval letter. 3 months later, she closed on a 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood, 40 minutes outside the city. Nothing extravagant. A nice yard. A 2-car garage. A neighborhood where people walked their dogs in the evening and waved at each other from their driveways. The day she signed those closing documents, her hands were shaking. The realtor handed her the keys, and Reese just stood there in the driveway for a minute, holding them. She had done it. She had actually done it. For 3 months after that, life was exactly what she had worked for. She'd come home from work, pour a glass of wine, sit on the back patio, and just feel settled. Grounded. Safe in a way she had never quite felt before. Her home. Her space. Her name on every document. No one could touch that. Or so she believed. Before we go any further, sis, if you believe in hard work, boundaries, and women who refuse to be walked over, hit that subscribe button right now. We bring you powerful, real stories like this one every single week. You do not want to miss what's coming. Now let's get back into it. Now, let's talk about the key. When Reese first moved in, her parents, let's call them Diane and Frank, came out to visit. They walked through every room, made the right noises, touched the countertops, looked out the back windows. And Diane said, with tears in her eyes, "We are so proud of you, baby." And Reese, who had waited her entire adult life to hear those words, felt her heart just open right up. In that warm, emotional moment, she made the kind of decision you make when you're feeling generous and safe and loved. She went to the kitchen drawer, pulled out a spare key, and handed it to her mom. "Just for emergencies," she said. "If there's ever a water leak or something goes wrong while I'm at work. Just, in case." Diane took the key. Smiled. Dropped it in her purse. Reese thought absolutely nothing more of it. Now, across town, Kayla's life was quietly falling apart. Kayla had married young, a guy named Brandon who had the kind of confident energy that reads as ambition when you're 22 and reads as recklessness when you're 30, and he's on his third failed business. They had 2 kids, a lease that was almost up, a debt situation that had gotten out of hand, and a landlord who had given his final warning about late rent. Kayla went to Diane and Frank, of course she did. And Diane and Frank, of course, said yes, absolutely, we will figure this out. But here's the problem. Diane and Frank lived in a 2-bedroom condo. There was no way a family of 4 was moving in there without the whole thing becoming a disaster. So the 4 of them, Diane, Frank, Kayla, and Brandon, sat around the kitchen table and had a long, serious conversation. About Reese's house. A house they didn't own. A house they had never been invited to use as a solution. A house with a spare key that was given for emergencies, not for this. Reese was not at that table. Reese was not consulted. Reese was not called before, during, or after that conversation. On a Tuesday afternoon, while Reese was in back-to-back meetings at work, Diane and Frank drove to the house. They used the key. They walked through every room and decided which bedroom would work for Kayla and Brandon, which one would be for the kids, and whether the 3rd bedroom could double as a playroom. By Thursday evening, Kayla's family was in. 2 kids. A dog Reese had never heard about. Brandon's gaming setup in the guest room. All of it. Inside Reese's home. Without one single phone call. Reese's Saturday plans were simple and sweet. Drive to the house, spend the morning pulling weeds in the garden beds out front, maybe pick up lunch from a barbecue spot she'd been meaning to try. Just a slow, easy, hers kind of day. She turned onto her street and immediately felt something in her stomach shift. The minivan. Kayla's silver minivan, the one with the cracked taillight and the Dance Mom sticker half peeled off the back, was sitting in her driveway like it had always been there. Reese pulled up to the curb. Put her car in park. And just sat there. It's fine. They're probably just visiting. Maybe Mom brought Kayla by to see the house. There's an explanation. She walked up to her own front door, and before she even put the key in the lock, she heard it. A cartoon. Playing from inside her living room. And the unmistakable shriek of a child running down a hallway. She opened the door. Shoes. A whole row of little shoes right there by the front entrance. Kid sneakers, rain boots, a pair of men's slides she had never seen before. From the kitchen, the smell of bacon grease and someone else's coffee. Down the hall, through the door of what was supposed to be her guest room, the sound of 2 kids absolutely destroying something. Reese stood in the entryway of her own home and could not move. Then Kayla walked out of the kitchen. Smiling. Smiling. Like she was the hostess and Reese was the one who had dropped by unexpectedly. "Oh my gosh, you're here. Mom said you might come this weekend." It's been honestly so hectic getting everything moved in, you would not believe how much stuff two kids accumulate. Reese could not find a single word. And then Diane and Frank appeared from the living room. Frank with the look of a man who had already mapped out his argument. Diane holding a mug, Reese's mug, from Reese's cabinet, filled with what was presumably Reese's coffee. "Now just hear us out," Frank said, stepping forward with both hands up like he was managing a situation. "Family takes care of family. Kayla needed help, you have the space, it's a temporary arrangement. We knew you'd understand. We knew you'd understand." Reese looked around the room. At Brandon setting up a monitor in the back bedroom. At Kayla's kids tearing through the hallway. At both of her parents standing in her living room like this was a done deal, a reasonable thing, a decision that had simply been made. And something inside her, something that had been polite and accommodating and patient for her entire life, cracked wide open. What happened next was not gentle. Reese told them to leave. At first, her voice was steady. Controlled. The way you speak when you're trying to hold it together because you know if you lose it, they'll use that against you. Then it wasn't so controlled. Frank got louder. Diane cried, full tears, the kind Diane had always cried when she wanted a situation to resolve in her favor. Kayla retreated into the language of victimhood, her kids, her stress, her circumstances, as if Reese's name wasn't on the mortgage paperwork in a folder inside the very house they were standing in. And then Diane said it. "You have always been so selfish. Your sister is struggling and you are standing here thinking about yourself. Selfish." Reese had financially supported this family in quiet ways for over a decade. She had lent money that was never paid back, twice. She had covered Thanksgiving groceries without being asked. She had driven 3 hours to help her parents move into their condo. She had shown up for every family event, every crisis, every moment, reliably, without complaint, without needing anything back. And the word she got was selfish. Something settled in Reese's chest in that moment. Not rage, though the rage was there. Something colder than rage. Something clear. She took one long breath. Looked at every single person in that room. And when she spoke, her voice was completely level. "You have 2 weeks. If Kayla's family is still in this house after 2 weeks, I will handle it through the courts. I'm not saying that to be dramatic. I'm saying it because it's exactly what's going to happen." Then she picked up her purse. Walked out the front door. Got in her car. And drove. Her phone started ringing before she even reached the end of the street. She let it ring. That evening, Diane called 3 times. Frank sent a long text about respect, about family values, about the kind of daughter Reese was choosing to be. Kayla sent a voice memo, 14 minutes long, laying out her entire financial situation in extraordinary detail. Reese listened to the first 40 seconds. Then she set her phone face down on her kitchen counter. And she opened her laptop. And she started searching for real estate attorneys in her area. Okay, before we get to the part where Reese completely flips this whole situation, and trust me, the way she does it is so satisfying, I need you to pause for 1 second. Share this video with your bestie, your coworker, your group chat, somebody needs to see this today. And drop a comment right now, what would you have done in Reese's position? Would you have stayed calm or completely lost it? Tell me below. Okay, let's get into the good part. Here is the thing about people who take advantage of someone who is quiet and composed. They confuse patience for weakness. They look at a woman who doesn't yell, doesn't throw things, doesn't cause a scene, and they think, she's not really going to do anything. They are almost always wrong about that. Reese's first call the following Monday morning was to a real estate attorney. She had done her research over the weekend, read reviews, checked credentials, found someone who specifically handled property rights and unlawful occupancy cases. She laid out the facts calmly and clearly. The attorney's response was simple. It's your home. Your name is on the deed. There was no written agreement, no lease, no formal permission given. They have no legal right to be there. None at all. The attorney drafted a formal notice to vacate. Not a text message. Not a phone call. An actual legal document, served by a process server, with a vacate deadline clearly stated and legal consequences outlined in plain language. When that notice arrived at the house on a Wednesday afternoon, the family's reaction was immediate. Diane called Reese furious. "You sent us legal papers? Like we're strangers off the street?" Reese said, "I asked you to leave. You didn't. This is the next step." Frank tried a different approach entirely. He showed up at Reese's apartment, she had been staying there since the incident, and waited in the parking lot. When she came home from work, he launched into a speech. About sacrifice. About everything they had given her growing up. About, is this really the woman we raised? Reese stood in that parking lot and listened to every single word. And when he was finished, she said, "Dad. You raised me to work hard and be responsible. I did that. This is my house. I need you to honor that." Frank stood there with absolutely nothing left to say. Meanwhile, Reese was building something just as important as the legal case. She was documenting everything. Every phone call, logged with date and time. Every text saved and screenshotted. Every voicemail kept. Every visit from Frank written down in a notes app with timestamps. Because Reese already understood something that the rest of the family hadn't figured out yet. This was not going to end quietly. And she was going to be ready for whatever came next. The 2-week deadline came and went. Not only had Kayla's family not moved out, they had gotten more comfortable. New throw pillows had appeared on Reese's couch. Brandon had built shelving units in the garage. The kids had personalized their bedroom with drawings on the wall. Actual marker drawings. On Reese's freshly painted wall. And then, and this is the part that takes audacity to a whole new level, Kayla sent Reese a text asking if it would be okay to adopt a second dog. A second dog. Reese read that text. Set her phone down. Picked it back up. Read it again. Then she forwarded it directly to her attorney, along with the rest of her documentation, with one sentence, ready to proceed. The attorney filed an unlawful detainer action. Formal eviction proceedings. Court documented. On the record. The kind of thing that shows up on background checks. The kind of thing that follows people. Now the tone changed completely. Kayla went from casual to panicked almost overnight. Diane's calls shifted from angry to desperate. "Please, let's just talk, we can work this out." Frank, who had spent 3 weeks acting like Reese was being dramatic and unreasonable, suddenly very much wanted a conversation. Reese agreed to one sit-down. Just her parents, no Kayla, no Brandon. She came in calm, sat down, and laid it out with zero emotion and total clarity. "Here is where we are. Kayla's family is leaving this house. That is not up for discussion. The only thing left to decide is how, voluntarily, in the next 10 days, or through the courts, which will cost everyone more time, more money, and will be public record. That is the choice on the table." Diane wept. Said Reese had broken her heart. Said she didn't recognize her own daughter anymore. And Reese, this woman who had spent her entire life quietly absorbing things so that other people would be comfortable, looked at her mother and said something she had been carrying for years. "Mom. You broke into my house. You let them move in without a single conversation with me. You called me selfish for wanting my own home back. I'm not the one who broke something here. But I'm still the one sitting at this table trying to handle it the right way. I need you to meet me there." Long pause, music fades to near silence. Diane said nothing. Frank looked at the floor. 10 days later, Kayla's family was out. If you think the story ended there, honey, it did not. Because the family had one more card they thought they could play. They went to the extended family. Within 2 weeks of Kayla moving out, Diane and Kayla had made the rounds. Aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends who had known Reese since she was a child. They told their version, the version where Reese was cold, calculated, and had thrown her struggling sister and her 2 babies out onto the street over something as trivial as a house. Reese started receiving messages from relatives she hadn't talked to in years. Some disappointed. Some outright cold. How could you do that to your own blood? I thought you were better than this. Your grandmother would be heartbroken. It hurt. Real talk, it hurt deeply. This woman had done everything right. Had gone through every proper legal channel. Had given her family multiple chances to do the right thing. And she was still being painted as the villain in her own story. But here is what Reese did. And this is the move. She did not call anyone to argue. She did not go down the rabbit hole of trying to correct every relative individually. She did not send a defensive paragraph to every single person who had come at her sideways. She sent one message to the family group chat. No paragraph. No explanation. No emotional appeal. 3 attachments. A photo of the deed, her name, the property address, the recorded date. A screenshot of the legal notice to vacate, date stamped, showing it had been formally issued and ignored. A photo she had taken the very morning she discovered the move-in. Kayla's minivan in the driveway. Tiny shoes lined up at the front door. Someone else's breakfast visible through the glass of the front window. One message. 3 attachments. Not one single word of explanation. The group chat went completely silent. No more comments. No more, how could you? No more guilt trips from people who had only heard one side. A handful of relatives, the ones with integrity, privately messaged Reese to apologize. Said they hadn't had the full picture. Said they were sorry for what they'd said. Kayla never apologized. Diane eventually sent a message that said she hoped one day they could move forward. Not sorry, just hopeful. Reese read it, put her phone in her back pocket, and walked outside to water the plants on her front porch. Because that front porch was still there. Still hers. Still standing exactly where she left it. The weeks after all of it settled were quiet. And Reese let them be quiet. She repainted the bedroom wall, the one with the marker drawings. She reorganized the garage that Brandon had turned into a storage unit. She deep-cleaned every room, replaced a few things that had been damaged, and slowly, space by space, made the house feel like hers again. She told me it was almost meditative. The act of physically reclaiming each room. Moving things back to where she wanted them. Deciding what she wanted on the walls, what she wanted in the cabinets, how she wanted the backyard set up. Small acts of ownership that felt enormous after everything that had happened. The relationship with her parents changed. It didn't end. Reese isn't someone who throws people away. She still sees them. Still shows up for holidays, still answers the phone. But the dynamic is different now. More honest. Frank and Diane seem to understand, in a way they perhaps didn't before, that there are limits. That Reese's life, Reese's resources, Reese's home are not a family pool that anyone can dip into when it becomes convenient. Boundaries, it turns out, don't destroy relationships. They clarify them. With Kayla, things are still cool. Polite when they have to be in the same room, but there's a distance now that Reese doesn't feel the need to rush across. Maybe time will soften it. Maybe it won't. Reese is okay with not knowing that answer yet. And Brandon? Apparently has a new business idea in the works. Reese genuinely wishes him well. She means that. When I asked Reese how she felt looking back on everything, the whole arc of it, from the morning she found the minivan to the quiet Saturday mornings she has now, she thought about it for a second and then said, "I don't feel like I won some big battle. I feel like I finally told the truth. Like for the first time in my adult life, I said, this is mine, I built it, and it matters. And that feeling was worth every single uncomfortable moment it cost me to get there. Worth every uncomfortable moment." Write that one down. On the surface, yes, this is a story about a house. About a deed, a spare key, and a family that overstepped in the most breathtaking way possible. But underneath all of that, underneath every courtroom document and late-night phone call and quietly devastating moment in that hallway, this story is about something so much bigger. This is a story about what happens when the woman who has always been the strong one decides to finally be strong for herself. And so many of us are Reese. Maybe not with a house. Maybe your version looks like a relationship where you always show up and they never do. A workplace where you carry the team and someone else gets the credit. A family dynamic where your feelings are the ones that always get managed last, or not at all. A friendship where you are always the giver and she is always the taker. But somewhere in your life, in some version of this story, you are the capable one. The one people have quietly learned to rely on without asking. The one who absorbs, adjusts, accommodates. The one who will figure it out. The one who will make room. And the people who love us, even genuinely, will keep taking that room. Until we say stop. Not with a blow-up. Not with a breakdown. Not by torching every bridge and walking away from everyone. But with one clear, steady, unmovable line. This is mine. I built this. And it matters. There is nothing selfish about those words. There is nothing cold about a boundary that protects what you bled for. There is nothing unfair about expecting the people who say they love you to love you, not just your patience, not just your capacity, not just your spare bedroom. You. All of you. Including the part of you that says no. If you are sitting somewhere right now with a Reese story of your own, if something in the last 20 minutes made your chest tight because you recognized it, I want to speak directly to you for a second. Your exhaustion is real, sis. The quiet weight of being the dependable one, the responsible one, the one who never causes problems, that is a heavy thing to carry for years. And you have probably carried it with so much grace that the people around you have no idea how much it costs you. But here is what Reese's story shows us. Silence is not the same as peace. Swallowing things is not the same as forgiving them. Keeping the peace is not the same as being okay. And the moment you finally speak up, the moment you file the paperwork, send the message, draw the line, say the thing you've been holding back for 3 years, the world does not end. The relationships that are built on something real? They survive it. They might look different for a while. There will probably be tears and long text messages and a very quiet group chat. But the real ones find their way back to solid ground. And the relationships that were only working because of your silence? Well, now you know what they were actually built on. And that, as painful as it is information you needed. Reese has her house. She has her Saturday mornings in the garden, her backyard patio, her kitchen that smells like her food, her front door with one spare key, and this time, she knows exactly who deserves to hold it. That is not a small thing. That is everything. So here is the question I want to leave you with tonight. Is there a space in your life, not necessarily a literal house, but a space, a boundary, a piece of yourself, that someone has moved into without your permission? Without asking? Without considering that it was yours? And if the answer is yes, what would it feel like to ask for it back? You don't have to answer that right now. Just sit with it. Let it breathe. Because sometimes the most powerful thing a woman can do isn't dramatic. It isn't loud. It isn't a confrontation that ends in tears and slammed doors. Sometimes the most powerful thing is just building something so completely yours that nobody can take it from you. And then protecting it like you mean it. And that is the story of Reese. A woman who worked in silence, built in silence, and then, when the moment came, spoke up in a way that changed everything. If this story moved you today, if it made you feel something real, or reminded you of your own worth, or gave you even a little bit of courage for something you've been sitting on, then I need you to do 3 things before you click away. First, subscribe. Hit that button right now, because every single week on this channel, we bring you stories exactly like this one. Real women. Real betrayal. Real justice. You deserve to have these stories in your feed. Second, share this video. Send it to your sister, your best friend, your coworker, your group chat. Somebody in your life needs to hear Reese's story today. Be the one who sends it to her. Third, comment below. Tell me, what was the moment in this story that hit you the hardest? Was it the spare key? The hallway? The group chat message with 3 attachments and 0 words? I read every single comment, and I want to hear from you. This channel exists for one reason and one reason only, to remind women like you that your boundaries are valid, your hard work deserves protection and justice. Real, quiet, permanent justice? It is always, always, worth standing up for. I love you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.